Hello, everybody. Welcome to this budget work session for the operational budget for the town of South Kingstown. It is Monday, February 29th, 2016, around 7:30. 6:30? 6:30. Thank you, John. We created a special day this year just for this budget session, for you, Steve. Our first order of business is a pledge to the flag. Ms. Reisinger. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And take it away, Steve.
Hey, Steve, I'm sorry, I just had a question. So the decrease with the school resource officer, is that because the school's contributing, or?
It's a different officer that was not senior pay.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
Well, it's either that, it's that, as well as I think it was a change in back, in terms of, one of the things you're gonna see, because when we moved healthcare and dental and life insurance into each of the operating accounts, what you're seeing is that if somebody has a family plan this year, leaves, and we hire somebody who's an individual, we're gonna see a change from the $16,000 for the family plan down to the 7 or 8.
Right.
When you get to the libraries tonight, you're gonna see the libraries had a changeover where they picked up almost $18,000 in healthcare costs over the current year. And it's because of people coming in where we're replacing individuals that are going in as family plans.
Okay.
So we've got those type of things that are going to have to take balance out though, because if you had somebody who had a family plan left and didn't really came in, one of the other budget accounts is going to
Right.
balance out.
Okay, thank you.
Both that as well as if we have a junior officer, we wouldn't see the same distribution. And I can have a detailed thing on that for you.
Oh, it's all right, I was just curious, thank you.
The state aid to the cities and towns has gone down, as we talked about. Next year, we're looking at about a 7.2% reduction, or about $140,000. And it would be going down considerably more than that if it wasn't for the pass-through revenues. When you look at the chart on the page 211, it shows you how important that state aid was going back to 2007. So when we move on, we've got a $23.191 million budget. Moving on, as far as the departmental services are concerned, departmental services, we're looking at 2.2% associated with personnel, 2.6% associated with the benefits. One of the things that we're looking at within the benefits is that we've used about a 3% increase in the cost of health care. We anticipate the health care cost will be higher than that, and what we will do is probably need to subsidize a portion of that from funds held in reserve for the health care reserve fund. But at this point, we budgeted 3. We're maintaining it at that level. As far as the town personnel program is concerned, again, I want to identify that we are working with 4 independent labor groups as well as 1 non-organized group. 3 have contracts that will be in the 2nd year of the contract, and the 4th IBPO that represents our sworn police officers, we will be negotiating a new contract with effective for July 1 of this year. Hopefully that will be more than a 12-month and hopefully will be a 3-year. Overall, for dental, we're also looking at about a 3% increase. 219 shows you what the rates are that we have to pay in terms of the municipal employees retirement system for the 17-year versus what they are in the 16-year. From page 219 through page 223, it's a summary of, or a thumbnail of each of the municipal departments. And we're going to go through those individually, so I'm going to skip over that for the sake of time. When we get into the insurance accounts, we're going to do those as well. The unemployment, the workers' comp, as well as the health care and human services. So if we jump through all of those, we get to the capital budget, which you've already adopted. That's displayed on page 226. Then I get into a thumbnail on each of the other funds that we're dealing with. First being the school's unrestricted fund. Understand that from an accounting standpoint, because more than 50% of the money that comes into the school fund comes from property taxes, it's considered as resident to the general fund. So when we do the audit, that's all combined in the general fund. We still maintain the operating fund, or what we call the unrestricted fund, as an independent fund, but for accounting purposes, it is considered as part of the general fund. We're looking at them continuing to see a loss of about $300,000 a year. It's been as much as $340,000. Next year, they're looking at about $302,000 in losses. The proposed budget at this point stands at $59.926 million. Of that amount, 85.5%, or $51,387,000, is coming from the tax base itself. What we're seeing is that they're continuing to see an enrollment decline of about 66 students per year, and we're seeing that the last recorded cost per pupil in the 13-14 year was in at about $17,819. The Peacedale offices will go through that. That's an independent fund. Senior program will be dealing with that tomorrow evening with each of those different programs. I do want to spend a couple of minutes on page 228, debt service fund. We've already mentioned that we've moved all of the revenues into the debt service fund. So now that what we're looking at is the general fund is only going to show what the tax dollars are that will be transferred to that. The chart on the bottom of the page shows what we're anticipating with debt service payment requirements from property taxes being over the next 6-year period. So in the 16-year, we're projecting that that debt service payments will be necessary of, in the current year, $1,370,000. Yet we've got an appropriation of $1,434,000. The reason for that is As the council will recall, we refinanced about, I think it was 6.8 million. 6.9, and what that's going to do is to save about $568,000 over the life of that bond issue. The 2015-16 year savings is $64,227. That money will go into the debt service fund and stay there, even though it's not spent in the year in which it was intended. For the 17 year, we're looking at a property tax requirement of $988,615. This is nothing you haven't seen in the capital budget. But what we're proposing is, rather than drop the appropriation from $1,434,000 down to $988,000, keep it at $1.2 million. This will mean that you'll overfund by $211,000 in the 17 year. That's in advance of us doing the debt that will be put into permanent financing for the Guild, for the school. There's $1 million for the Guild, $1 million for school, 4.15 on the Community Rec Center. That will be sold sometime in the latter part of the 16-17 year. There'll be no debt service payments on it. But what my concern was is that if we drop the debt payment down to $988,000, the following year's payment's going to be $1.5 million. So we would end up having to pick up $500,000 in new debt service requirements. What we're proposing is that we would put $1.2 million in 17, where we would have an excess of $211,000. That plus the $64,000 from the current year would give you $275,000 to pay down that first year of debt service once we load that new debt in. That way, what I'm trying to do is to give you a flat, with no spikes, as to the amount of property taxes that'll go into debt service. As you can see, once you get up to the 17-18 year and 18-19 year, this is assuming that you're going to continue to float the additional $4 million in debt for school purposes and $400,000 for the Public Works program, that you're going to be up to about $1,370,000. Then at that point it starts to decline. So again, what I'm attempting to do, and I'm recommending to you, is that what we would do is to overfund in those years where we have debt service going down, and overfund in those and underfund when we need the money the most. So that way, what you're able to do is to have an overpayment of $238,000 in the 17-18 year, and we'd still have $35,000 in the account. So I think it would be far better than going to $988, because you're artificially reducing what your needs are going to be from one year to the next. The key to municipal finance should be to take whatever spikes to flatten out what those spikes would be going forward. So this is the schedule that I think would work. I also think that we're overestimating what the projected property tax appropriation requirements will be, because we continue to front-load debt, assuming a 4% interest. Most of our debt issues are going in at around 2% or less. So I'm not sure that the values that we're using, I think once we see the debt service, what actually gets sold, it's going to be better than that. But I've always used a conservative estimate on forecasting debt. But I think that this would be the best schedule to use going forward. This would mean that you'd have $550,000 that would be coming from the town side, and the schools would be seeing the remainder would come. But it's all coming from the property tax itself. So this is another one of those options. We're making a recommendation to you. It's certainly something that we want to discuss with the council. But we think this is the most appropriate way of financing debt program going forward over the next 6 years. Enterprise funds are shown on 229. We'll get into those when we do the specific reviews on them. A new section that I've added to the budget message is looking at the future years. What are the things that we need to be concerned with as we move forward? And I've listed several items there that I think are items that are going to have impact on future budgets as we go forward that we need to keep in front of us. One is obviously the recreation center, which we've talked about. We're anticipating a full-year operation at being around the $425,000 cost. If that is going to occur, we have to determine, well, where's the funding going to come from for that? One of the things that needs to be, I think, seriously evaluated and council has to give approval to is to look at coming up with partnerships or sponsorships potentials. When I talk about that, it could be as much as, people having names on a room as far as a sponsorship, or a sponsorship that would also give them use of a portion of the building. Let's use an illustration. Let's say South County Hospital wanted to have cardio rehab services available at that facility. And they were going to bring in equipment to be able to do that that would then be able to be used by other groups. Is that something that we would allow them to do, to have a sponsorship on that room, and also to give them certain hours of the week that they would have the use? Obviously, their big rehab periods are 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the morning. Are there things that we can do that would generate that? Things as, that we should look at, are there charitable foundations that would want to contribute based on wellness programmings that are going to occur there? So I think that Friends of Recreation, and I think we could talk more of it once Leisure Services is in here, needs to do reviews in advance of that facility opening and seeing if there are offsets that are possible. We do believe that there are going to be programs that are going to generate income, but I think that if there were sponsorships or that were available, it may lessen what the tax burden would be. And the more we can lessen the tax burden, the greater we can open up the opportunities to the community for use of that facility. The second item that I highlight is I am concerned with the radio alarm box system, because that is a cost that's going to be a municipal cost once we do the study, and it's also going to be a cost for our businesses that use the alarm system. They use it because they have to. It's based on fire safety codes. And the question is, can we continue to provide a viable system on a hard wire? We need to take a look at that and come up with different options. We're dealing with, the horn system for the volunteers at this point goes over that same hard wire. I've got 3 stations at this point that the horns aren't working in. I've got wire that'll have to be relayed to be able to open that up. These are expenses that I think are ill-advised going forward. I think we need to come up with a program that looks at what those costs would be and an implementation period. Many communities have looked at this, put ordinances in place that would give either a 3, 5, 7-year period for people to be able to integrate in. It also is helpful to the businesses because it would allow for self-testing where they won't have to pay fees for alarm companies coming in to do the testing if it is a two-way system. When I say two-way, between the dispatch center and the businesses. We need to look at that. We need to identify costs. We need to identify how do we pay for it, and how do we protect the business community from shock expenses that will be necessary. I think it can be integrated over a number of years. I think that the hardwire system can be in place for those years, but I think we need to have a concerted plan in place on how we're going to deal with it. Open space land acquisition program, I think we need to start taking a look at that and assuming that there's going to be less purchases coming. There will be one purchase coming within the next couple of months to the council. But outside of that, I'm not seeing that there's going to be a lot that should be coming, and I'm wondering whether or not more monies from the real estate conveyance tax should be made available for other purposes. We spend a lot of money buying property that the public has no access to. If we can provide access to those properties, provide a parking area for them, and cut walking trails in some of these beautiful areas that we have, I think that that would be a proper use for some of those funds. We can't take too much of it because we're still paying for bond issues with the recreation conveyance taxes. But we should look at having more set aside than just a set aside going for new purchases. And whether the purchases are for development rights or whether they're for fee simple. I think we need to have a broader discussion on that, both with leisure services, conservation, and planning in the council to make some long-term decisions, because we've had these programs in place for, about 15 years. They should be reviewed as to whether or not we're doing the best that we can do with the resources that we have. Old Mountain Field, when we look at that concession building, there is nothing in the capital budget on how we're going to attack that problem. We need to do a comprehensive review. It's not just of the building, but we need to understand that is one of our largest facilities and with the most use. We need to look at what is it that we as a community want to have at that location for the purposes, not just for the concession stand and the restrooms, but is that what we need to have there? Is the traffic circulation appropriate at this point? Town Beach is another one. Many people want us to have the beach back to what it was 15 years ago. It's never going to happen. A realistic review needs to be made as to what the beach should look like and what it can look like and what are the costs of those. And how does the community want to achieve those goals? Because if not, you're going to see a lot of pressure on this council and future councils in terms of components rather than elements of an overall plan. So I think we need to look at that. The street lighting, that's a program we do need to evaluate as we go forward. I'm not in any hurry to do that because I want to see what other communities are doing with it, and I want to see what's in our best interest. Sustainability programs, I've outlined for you what we're doing. The question is, from a policy perspective, is it enough? If it's not enough, what are the things that the council wants us to look at and put cost factors on? We talked about this in December. We talked about it in January. It's still here as a discussion issue. But these are items that I think are very important as we look forward. I'm sure that, people can come up with another 10 of those, but these are the ones that are going to affect not just the operating budget, but your capital budget, and may, in fact, look over the long run at to what bonding issues the community should be looking at. When we get into tab 4, we're going to see that you'll see the debt, what's outstanding debt, and you've got some flexibility, you being a council within the next 6 or 7 years, to make some additional plans on what the community needs to do, if anything, in terms of debt. But there'll be debt loading capabilities available based on a declining debt service requirement. Tab 3 talks about the form of government and gives a lot of the budget process so that people will understand what we're doing. Page 3.3 gives you all of the schedule for the budget calendar itself, and I ask people to seriously take a look at that and make sure that everybody's still available for those evenings. If not, I got to make sure that we can do rescheduling. We can reschedule if we need to, but I want to use that as a as the template right now. So if it's a problem, please let me know. As far as budgetary control on 3-4, we are really going to present to the general public what is the proposed budget procedures. And that comes right out of the charter. You've got all the information from the charter itself that's there. When you get to 3-11, 3-11 are the goals of the town council that were set as goals and objectives for the 14-16 term. We've defined those as 12 different goals, and we've given each of the bullet points that the council approved last year when this was developed. Then what we're going to do is to use those goals to be able to look at what the municipal departments are doing in terms of being able to meet those goals. So I'm not going to run through that. They're your goals. You know what they are. That gets us to tab 4. Tab 4 is a section that I think it's a brand new section in the budget, but a very important section because what it does is it provides a comprehensive review of all of the different programs that we're running. And also, it's one of those sections where I didn't want to ask and I didn't understand, but this gives you the explanation. This talks about the fund descriptions. It talks about what are the different funds that we're working with. Governmental funds, we've got the general fund. I've already mentioned that the school fund is a part of general. We deal with trust funds, are part of our governmental funds. Those are the ones that have got specific assignments. This would be the trust funds for the guild or for any of the education programs that are run. Special revenue funds, I think you're all familiar with those. Those are governmental funds as well. So we're operating our, Peacedale offices, seniors, neighborhood guild through that. Then you've got your proprietary funds. Proprietary funds include not just the enterprise funds, but also internal revenue funds. So you can see on 4.2, you've got each of the enterprise funds, and you've got the two major internal funds. Our internal funds are monies that are held aside for specific purposes to meet future liabilities. Healthcare Management Fund is a fund that was set up several years ago when we went to a cost-plus healthcare system. And what that means is that we put a certain dollar amount in to pay for healthcare for the year, and if expenses are less than that, the money stays with that healthcare fund. If they're more the following year, the healthcare fund subsidizes what that cost would be. Right now, that healthcare fund has about $3.8 million available in it. 2.9, or about almost $3 million, is school funding that's available for healthcare, and about $875,000 for the town that we've got available in surplus position at this point. Comp absences is money that's set aside for severances when an employee were to leave the employee. Labor contract requirements for unused vacation, sick leave benefits are paid out as people leave. We set aside about $1.7 million at this point within the municipal funds so that we're not having to reappropriate that on a yearly basis in the operating program. Because those costs are really incurred costs. So if somebody had vacation time that they're going to be paid out on that was accrued in the 14-15 year, the 14-15 year should have set that money aside. So what we do is we put those monies into the compensated absences fund. My target was to have about 50% funding of the unfunded liability that's there, and we've hit that. So we're maintaining both of those at the levels that we thought were appropriate. Healthcare Management Fund has some good flexibility available, particularly to the schools. In the last couple of years, we've pulled that fund down in terms of size and had money transferred into the OPEB account. OPEB at this point, we've got a fund which is at about 30% funding, is it? 28% funding, where we're one of the leaders in the state as far as being able to meet unfunded liability there. It's the use of all these different funds and being able to keep the accounting on all of those that I think that helps us be able to maintain the financial posture that we do. The next page just gives you a flow chart of funding sources to the program users. I'm not going to spend any time with that. The next page shows you a summary of the general fund revenues. Where it shows property taxes at $17.5 million, that's also inclusive of the prior year taxes as well as interest. That's not just the current year. But when we consider property taxes, it's what's generated that income. So that 17.4 is more than just current year taxes. But you can see of the 23.19 million, 75 cents of every dollar that's going in that general fund's coming from our taxpayers' pocket. The next page gives you the general fund summary so that you can see where the revenues are coming from. So this is the revenue statement, a consolidated revenue statement for the general fund. And you can see over the next two pages that we total out to the $23,191,000. I want to look at a couple of things. You can see under state aid, you can see that the Chapter 26 is zeroed out because it's moved to the debt service fund. You can see the incentive dollars zeroed out, even though we got the 144 under the state aid. You can see the loss of the $40,000 in the rental of the town properties We've talked about all of those. Police Department revenues, the change with what we had going from the crossing guards being removed. We can see the $15,000 increase on the emergency medical services, and you can see the rec fees up that $45,000 that we talked about. The second page here, 4-6, provides really the first illustration for the council of a revenue statement with negative revenues. And you can see here, these are called operating transfers or transfer outs. The 51.8, 51.3, it's going to the schools and so forth. So you're netting it out. That's why you're starting out with a revenue for the, of $69.4 million, but you're ending up with a net bottom line of $23 million for the general fund. Overall, again, if we turned everything backwards and we didn't make any of those changes, those three changes, you'd have a $76.4 million program and a $1.6 million increase, or 2.2%. And if you want to just reference that page, you can see that page. Look at tab 2-16. We'll show you the numbers in reverse. Moving on to 4.7, we talk about the changes that have been made. I'm not going to spend any time because all of these are identified globally, but they're ones I've already specifically identified in the budget message, as well as the unassigned fund balance. You can see what the history has been over the 5-year period since 2011. We started at about 12.7, and we're still targeting at about 13.1 for the 15-year. So, and when we look at that, what we're doing is comparing two things: what the percentage of the budget is to what the unassigned fund balance is. So you can see that it's been consistent where we've kept the level about the same. When we move on, the next sheet gets us now into the consolidated budget presentation, where what we're looking at here is what the combined revenue sources are. This is on all $92.8 million in expenses. You can see that the major expense, again, would be your $59,900,000 with the school fund and your general fund at the 23. And you can see each of your other funds as to what they are as a share of revenue. I think the next page, 410, is probably one of the most interesting pages as far as understanding the 2016-17 year budget. This is a chart that Trish put together that I think really gives you an idea of what you're doing as far as each of your different funds. You've got a revenue statement and an expense statement, and you've got an excess of revenue over expenditures as the bottom line. And you can see that you've got the debt service, as I explained earlier, is showing that it would have a surplus of $211,000. You're also seeing a water fund with a surplus. Why is that? When you set the water rates last year, you set the water rates assuming a 5-year water rate value. In other words, they weren't going to change for 5 years. In the first 2 years, you were supposed to take in more than what you would need. In the last 2 years, you take in less than what you would need and use from fund balance. So you're still looking at about $187,000 in revenue over what your expenses are. We're not going to balance this out. We're going to show you what the revenue expectations are. Wastewater fund should balance out, as well as the solid waste fund. So by the time you're done, when you look at the budget that you're putting forward, you've got a revenue statement of $92.8 million and an expenditure statement of $92.4, because those two funds are forecast to have surplus positions. Overall, when we look at the total budget versus last year adopted budget, it's up $1,439,000, or 1.6%. But this is a key for budget development in terms of understanding where your revenue sources are, as well as what the functional distribution is. So that is, I think, one of your more important pages. Moving on 411, these are all items that we've previously discussed in terms of the cap on real estate taxes, the freezing on the motor vehicle taxes, and the fact, a lot of times people say, well, how do you determine prior year? This talks about the 10 days of interest-free period that we use. The next page on 412 shows you the user fees. These are the ones out of your enterprise funds where, your water fund is showing, well, what's their rate base? Their rate base is based on, $192 is a flat rate that's paid, and there's 4 quarterly payments that have to be made. There's excess based on excessive use costs more than minimal use. You got your wastewater, which also shows that at $240, but that's billed twice a year, I think, as the council's aware. And the user fees that are in place for the solid waste fund are going to be explained in the solid waste fund as well. We then talk about the other fees, the corporation taxes. This is to provide the reader with a more global understanding of, or a general understanding of what are the different, these different factors, where do the monies come from. We get into, on page 415, expenditures by detail. This is for the areas of service. So this way, you're looking at the budget on what are the operating departments, what are their expense increases. I'm not going to belabor that because we'll go over each of them individually. Then we've got an expenditure history, and again, this expenditure history is just for the general fund. Once we get to the page 417, we're identifying the general fund based on use. Again, now we're looking at the salary, the benefits, the services, so that you can see where each of those different categories fit in. And you've got a pie chart to identify that as well. Then we move into expenditures for the entire 10 funds. So now we're looking at it more globally, where we're limiting the general fund really to 6 placeholders. And we're looking at each of the other funds. So this gives you an idea as to how you spend all of the money for the municipal program. 419 gives you pie charts for each one of those. General fund breakout, special revenue fund breakout, enterprise fund breakout, and a consolidated one. All of these should provide different ways of looking at the same numbers. When we get to page 4-20, you get to the fund types. So now we're identifying what enterprise funds, grouping those together to see what the value is for each of those different expenditures. And again, showing it by function and then showing it by category, use. We move on to page 421, and we show detail. Again, taking all of the different budgets that we have for the $92 million and showing a summary by area description. 422 now takes us to the last summary, which is a summary of each of the funds and what the projected expenditures are going to be and what the expected revenues are going to be. When we get to 423, we've broken out for you what the sources of revenue are for your $92 million and what your source of expenditure requirements are. This way you get to look at the budget from a holistic standpoint based on how much is coming from property tax, how much is coming from user fees, and so forth. The next page on 424 is a change in fund balance. Now, this shows you what each of the funds have for undesignated or unassigned fund balance or retained earnings and what they will be based on the 16-17 year. And you can see that we're still forecasting that general fund will be in at 12 million, school fund will be at 3.5 million, and so forth. Overall, all of your different funds will have a positive value of 25.1. I don't want you to think for a second that you can spend that money. Most of this money is assigned directly from retained earnings. Water, wastewater, solid waste, those monies are dedicated program funds that can only be used for those purposes. Debt service, again, it's showing a surplus only because it's got the money coming in, the $64,000 from the current year, and a forecast of $211,000 for next year. Each of your special revenue funds have got minor dollars associated with their fund balances. So when we look at the expenditures, you can see that there's there's in the area of 25 million, but when you subtract out dedicated funds, it's really your general fund that you have control over, and it's the school fund that has control over the 3.5. I want to make a statement as far as the school fund. Question was raised by the school committee to me that said that they had had a question on whether they should get rid of that $3.5 million. And I've indicated to them that the school fund needs to maintain a fund balance. And any fund balance that they maintain, if it becomes large, we're then able to commit that so that we don't have to bond things. Last year, we had a capital budget that looked at a $10.1 million bonding program. This year, it's down to $9 million. Why? Because we had $1 million less that was being spent for school purposes. A portion of that was that they took $903,000 out of the fund balance to pay for 14-15 year expenses in the capital, and they had another $240,000 this year that they were going to commit. Or was it 400? 250 that they were going to commit from fund balance for capital items. I want to keep doing that because I want to reduce the amount of debt service that we incur, because it's not just the debt principal, it's the debt interest that are never going to be necessary to be paid. Also, once capital projects have been approved by the state for funding, if we spend the money and we spend it from fund balance, we don't have to wait the 20 years of getting yearly payments of that money back. We get the full 35% back on what we've actually expended. So it makes it cleaner and a much more efficient operation for us in the long run. So if that question does come up, please understand that we can reduce the 3.5 to a lower number, but it shouldn't be something that we end up with it not having a reasonable expectation of being able to have a surplus on a yearly basis that would, if they have the surplus, just like the town council puts money into capital reserve funds if we've got it available in the operating fund at the end of the year, they need the ability to be able to do the same thing into their capital reserve funds. It'll save us money in the long run. If their idea is to spend it now and on things that haven't been anticipated in the past, it's just the wrong way of going forward. The 425 is another chart that Trish developed, which looks at the pay-as-you-go capital budget. Again, this isn't so much for council, but it is for the general public in terms of having one place where we talk about what the capital budgets for pay-as-you-go is going to mean for the year as well. The next page, 426, is the page I referred to earlier, which shows you if we didn't bond another penny going forward, what would we have for projected costs? General obligation bonds, we would pay off by the year 2030. The wastewater bonds would be paid off by 2024, and solid waste bonds, which is the Superfund bonds, would be paid off by 2026. If we decided that there was a checkbook that was wide open, we could put out that about $14 million in total costs and have no debt at all. And we wouldn't have to pay that much because you'd get rid of all the interest as well. But what I'm saying to you is that this is what your debt looks like today. Again, we're looking at additional loading of the debt based on the capital program that we have in place, but that's shown on page 427. 4-27 shows that in the current year, we're going to end up with general bonds worth about $12 million in debt. We're showing that for the 17 year that we would be up because we're going to have $6.15 million in new bonding going out. You'll be selling those bonds probably sometime between February and June of 2017. $1 million for the Guild, $1 million for the schools, and $4.15 for the rec center. The Guild has no impact on us because the debt service would be paid for through the Guild. The $1 million on the school, if we can delay that one, we will take a look at that. The 4.15 is a given that we will. So what we're looking at is if that 6.15 comes in, you'd have bonded debt of $16.3 million for June 30 of 2017. We're not paying debt service, but we're incurring the debt, and the first year of debt service will be the 17-18 year. That's why we were seeing the spike in the debt service fund that I wanted to pre-fund a portion of in 16-17. One of the things that's interesting here is that your gross debt per capita will be about $532. You can see that since 2006, it was as high as almost $1,500. So we're still in very good shape. Also, the debt ratio is shown at 0.37. It'll be down probably closer to 3.4 once the real numbers are in for the taxable value. That $4 billion number will be $4,600 million. So these are important pages that we've never shown you in the past that I think are helpful to getting a better perspective on everything that we're doing. The next section here, starting on 428, and I'm just going to go through it very briefly, shows you what the pay allocation and pay schedules are, position allocation and pay schedules are. For the non-organized, that's on 428. And on 429, we show what those positions are worth in terms of the steps that are included. So if somebody is coming in, and you look at page 29, if we said that we were bringing in a building official on grade 13, we would go to the next page and go to grade 13. They would start at $70,843, and then they would go forward after to the first step after 6 months to 73, and then 12 months later they go to 75 and to 78. So that's how that schedule works. On the IAFF, there's only 3 positions there. We show you what those steps are. IBPO, that's the schedule that's in place for 16-17, is an estimate because that's still yet to be negotiated. That assumes a 2.25% increase. We're also showing you on the emergency medical. Let me back up. We're showing you the municipal employees. You've got the position to classification again, and you've got the schedule that's there. And you've got the pay schedules on page 431 for each of the public works jobs that are out there. Page 432 gives you a line item detail as to where personnel are located. You can see the town council, you've got 5 positions that are there. Town manager's office is 3.2. There's no increase in the number of positions as you go through. The only change line items there is there's a decline of 0.4 on Parks and Recreation. That's because that's being reassigned to the Community Recreation Center. So the Community Recreation Center is showing 2.9, but it's really a 2.5 increase that's there. So we've gone from current year 215.15 positions that are presented, up 2.5 to the 217.65. And you can see the FTE equivalents that are there. The only positions that's not full-time equivalents would be the council, even though we're showing that at 5. Obviously, those are stipends that are paid. So that's the extent of the introduction to the budget. We then move to tab 5. Tab 5 is starts the template for all of the operating departments. The town council really has relationship to 3 departments. The town council's general budget, budget referendum, if there's one that's necessary, as well as the probate court. Here we show the town council with an organizational chart showing that it's responsible for boards, it's responsible for the manager and the solicitor's position. We then give a mission statement for the council. If there's changes that council wants on mission or function, we certainly can make changes on those. But this is what we see based on the charter that's in place and the comments and the goals and objectives that have been stated. We also give identification to the budget referendum in this account because this would be action that would be taken on the council's budget if there was a objection or a request to change that budget, as well as the appointments of the probate court. What we wanted to do there is to list what the different functions are within the probate court. We show priorities, and the priorities are then referenced back to the goals of the council. When we move on to 5.3, 5-3 then looks at what are the specific measures, and we can see during the current year we're anticipating 37 meetings. We're also looking at approximately 30 public hearings that have been scheduled, and that type of information. The funding comparison then takes a look at the total program for those three accounts. So you can see we're looking at about a $44.5 thousand increase of $9,982. Page 5-4 shows you where those increases are. You can see that the major increase in the town council is a $10,200 increase in the professional services. That's the money that the council asked to be placed in budget for the purpose of paying for the cost of the connection to provide for streaming of the meetings as well as live television broadcast through both Cox and through Verizon. I want to make sure it's clear that for this $10,200 is just for the annual contract that's going to be necessary for that purpose. There's an additional $30,000 that will need to be expended, which we assume will come out of the current year budget, to provide for the necessary camera and equipment, the ancillary equipment that's necessary for that operation. I've spelled that out in the budget message as well. The budget referendum, we're hopeful that that $11,008 won't be spent. Obviously, if that money's not spent, it gives us the first $11,000 toward the equipment that's necessary for the televising of the council meetings. Probate court, we're not expecting any changes whatsoever. So we're looking overall at $44,577. If there's no questions, I'll move on to 5-5. That's our legal services. What I wanted to do here is to identify each of the different agencies that are working for the town. So you've got Ursula Tights and Rich, Kelly Kelleher, Riley and Simpson, Loch Lord, and it shows what each of those different agencies are doing as far as different services. First Southwest and Loch Lord are not going to be coming out of this account, but we wanted to identify all the legal services that we're using. We're also identifying, both based on the charter as well as discussions with the attorneys, what their functions are, to provide the general public with an explanation. I think the council is well aware of what they do. On 5-6, what we want to do is to identify what the different retainers are for each of the individuals. The retainers were escalated by a 2.25% increase for the year. What we also have is the miscellaneous expenses as far as litigation outside of the retainers or expenses for court fees. We're anticipating, based on what's been filed with my office, that there's 1,180 hours that'll be spent. I keep track of what the billable hours are because we pay a retainer, we pay a flat dollar amount. But I want to look at what is our true cost over the course of the year if it was on an hourly rate based on the actual hours that they are penning in for services. And it's running at the 143 to 146 range. The criminal prosecution is down lower. That's probably closer to 100 at this point for what Mr. Simpson provides. General solicitor and planning is probably up closer to $175, which is what their going rate is in communities where they don't work with a retainer. most places, they're working on an hourly rate. I've always tried to keep it on a retainer base so that there's no surprises at the end of the year if something major comes up. This also then looks at what are the goals that they should be trying to accomplish on behalf of the council after reviewing the council's goals. These are identified here. I'm not going to go through them individually, but there's 4 specific items that they've suggested be highlighted. One of the other things that we're doing is we're giving you a chart on 5.7, and it's in each of the departments, which then gives you a summary of, you know, what the personnel is, what's in services, what's in commodities. But also what we're doing is we're forecasting what 17-18 will look like, and it's universal. 17-18 is based on assuming a 2.25% increase in salary and a 3% increase in benefits. And what we're looking at, so that this will show you whether we're anticipating major changes in 17-18 or decreases. There's very few. When we look at the municipal budget this year, there's no change in the service levels that we're providing. We're not looking to change anything in terms of service levels. We're trying to maintain existing. Obviously, having said that, the only expansion that we're really seeing will be us having to commit the necessary funds for the 6-month operation on the recreation center, which is, you know, we're talking about, you know, coming up with $144,000 on that avenue. So that's really the only change. So what you're seeing here with each of your accounts is going to be more or less what's the personnel cost, what's the benefit cost. That's usually where most of the changes are. And we're going to see changes in the 2% to 3.5% range. This is going through from tab 5 through tab 10, which will take you through the whole operating fund. The last page of the legal shows that we're talking about a 2.1% increase overall, or spending $181,000 for all of those different services. Now, if there's services in the zoning board where we have to hire an additional attorney because the planning board is being represented by Ursula Tights and Rich, those are additional dollars that are going to be expended from this account. Normally, what I'll try to do is to get those out of the zoning account itself. The next organizational chart shows the town manager's office, where I'm responsible for the appointments on the department heads and the operations of those departments, as well as the director of administration, who handles the personnel component, and the executive assistant that assists me in the office on a day-to-day basis. Again, a mission statement, functions, and again, if there's questions that the council has on any of the missions, statements, or functions, or priorities, or changes that you think are necessary in those priorities, we can look at doing that. I will say that when you look at specific measures of performance, where we talk about how do we spend our workday, understand that what we're presenting on how do we spend our workday here is the workday itself. This doesn't take into consideration any of the night hours, weekend hours that are expended with any of our municipal departments. Anyone who's outside of a union is on an administrative schedule and does not receive compensation unless there's a specific reason for it. So any of the department directors that are doing any type of work outside of the normal work schedule, those aren't shown there, but they're not compensated either. Goals for the 16-17 year talk about the things that we want to do in the manager's office. You know, we're looking at, you know, continuing to improve on the capital improvement program, as well as the development of our 17-18 year budget and the annual reports that we put out. We also need to negotiate contracts. We need to deal with economic development opportunities, all of those different things. Any of those and each of them are identified to reflect one of the goals that the council has assigned within their overall program. It's about a 3.1% increase here, and this is another one of those cases where if you look at the expenditure statement on 513, you'll see what that we've got changes that are going to occur with municipal retirement. We're also seeing changes as far as the medical insurance is staying the same from, in this account, it's staying the same. We've got salary increases that are going up 3.3% because we've still got one individual within this office that's moving through the STEP plan as a recent hire. So you can see where the monies are that we anticipate being able or required to spend. Be a budget of $422,792, up 3.1% over the current year. We then move on to the Director of Administrative Services and her oversight on personnel. Personnel office has really taken on greater duties and responsibilities as reporting requirements both for the ACA Act as well as the types of information that have to be kept for filing purposes and payroll administration requirements. So there's a number of those different functions. I think that they're well listed here in terms of the things that that department is doing. We still have only one person in that office. We have part-time secretarial assistants for that office. But you can see from the priorities, there's a number of things that we need to do. We're dealing both with, the federal requirements that have to be reported on, whether it's for Department of Transportation, for people that have got driver's licenses, whether it's dealing with the Obamacare, all of those different things come into play, as well as having to maintain the recruitment process for us. It's not just the recruitment for full-time, which is relatively limited, but it's the recruitment that has to be done in terms of all of our seasonal people and the background checks that need to be done to ensure that if we've got people working with our children in the children's programs that they meet certain conditions. So there's a number of those different types of things, as well as training programs that are offered and the regular workers' comp interactions. The goals are similar to what they are for accomplishments in the 15-16 year to 16-17. This is a 1.4% increase that we're looking at. This is we're not looking at any major changes here. It's just a flat line from current year. The next office gets into the town clerk's office on 519. With this, Dale documents all of the different divisions that she's responsible for and the different functions that her office is responsible for. I mean, I think this is the first year that we've asked the departments to really try to provide the public with an explanation, because I think in many cases people don't realize the number of services that are being provided in these different offices and what their responsibility requirements are. So the functions are listed there as far as records, land evidence, canvassing authority, vital statistics, probate court. We can go through those. And again, I know the council doesn't have time to go through everything that we've given you over the short period that you had it. Any of those things that you would like to see adjustments on or have questions on, we're certainly available one-on-one to answer those questions for you, whether it's me, Dale, or any of the other department directors. 522 lists the priorities for the 15-16 year. You can see that we're dealing with a lot of the software upgrades that Dale's office was put into place this year, as far as the online moorings, the view permit and view licenses, dealing with dog license renewals, which is another software that was dealt with. So there's all of these different things. I think what we're seeing is some major changes in the way we conduct business. And the efficiencies mean that we're not asking for additional personnel to be able to meet the increased demands. You can see Dale's got specific performance measures here in terms of the different things that she anticipates she's doing in the current year and what she anticipates would be in the 16-17 year. And she's got a number of goals on the things that she wants to accomplish during that period of time. A lot of it is going to be directly related to elections, and the need for working with the Secretary of State's office, as well as doing the training for the poll workers and keeping the voters list in place. We're looking at about a 2.9% increase on that budget, going from about $504,000 to $521,000, about a $17,000 increase, and that includes not just the town clerk's office, but also the canvassing authority. On 5.23, we've got the expenditure statement solely for town clerk and public information. As you can see with public information, we're closing out that account. The public information costs are being shifted into IT. We're going to have information technology is going to assume the responsibilities for any of the outside data processing or the internet access. Those costs will be brought in. In the past, there was $9,750 that was paying for services for the robocalling system that we had. New robocalling system has been installed by the state that we have free access to, so that $9,750 will be lost. But we're going to take all of those dollars out, so public information will be at zero for the 16-17 year. Canvassing authority has got the largest increase of any of our accounts, and it's pretty obvious why. You've got the increase going from 53.9 up to 75.9 in terms of the personnel element itself, and that's because of the increase from 8,700 to 29,000 for the seasonal salaries. Seasonal salaries are the poll workers, because we've got the two elections that'll be handled during that year. That overall $26,000 increase is most of the increase that we see as far as the overall departmental or division increase. So we're up 3.5% for the division, but 26,000 of that's made up of the canvassing authority. The good news is next year it'll go down. So, I mean, it's one of those that spikes up and down. We go to tab 6, and tab 6 is the finance office. And to give myself a 2-minute break, I'm going to ask Trish to walk you through her department.
So, as Steve indicated, the finance department is made up of several different functions, financial management and administration. Basically, we provide an overview of all of the funds, whether it's water department, all the enterprise funds, the school funds, and we provide assistance to all of them. And that's why in some of the revenue sections, you'll see a transfer coming in for payroll and accounting from the school department. They pay a portion of the oversight that we provide to the school department as far as the capital and then just day-to-day overview. Accounting and cash management division is just basically we administer all the accounts receivable, accounts payables, reconciliations, purchasing, risk management, speaks for itself, and tax and utility collections divisions. Those are the divisions that make up the finance department. I have provided a list of priorities for the current fiscal year. And what you see in this budget is that the departmental priorities link to the town council's objectives, which is one of the criteria in the GFOA distinguished budget award. So that's why you see these major changes in each department. And also the specific performance measures. That's just, you know, how we're doing last year, what we project we'll be doing in the current year, and then our anticipated for this budget year. Again, all of these things link to the town council's goals and objectives. And then what we anticipate we'll be doing in this current budget. So next year, you'll see how we performed. Page 6-5 is just our funding comparison. The finance department is up 1.2%. You'll see the detail on page 6.6. The majority of that pertains to the salaries, benefits. Not much else changes in the finance world. The audit for the current year is $25,000. That's going down a little bit. I think our bids came in a little bit lower last year when we bid those services, so that's what the change is there. That's it. Is that a long enough break?
That was long enough. I think what's really important, too, is that the scope of what the finance department does, it's touching many more of the departments a lot closer than it ever did before, based on the accounting controls that are in place. And the personnel function, the payroll now and the benefits are all something that we can attack from a person level to a division level to a fund level. And we can analyze where those how those things are going to impact us. One of the things that, Trish has been working on and we'll be seeing probably in the next couple of weeks is dealing with health care. We've got to make a determination on whether we stay on a cost-plus basis or go and change that to a fully insured premium. And that'll be coming to the council in terms of a recommendation. But that's taken a great deal of detailed work, but it's information that I think we're in a better position to manage that data so we can make better decisions as we go forward. And a lot of it is based on finance having a better grasp of the database and being able to manipulate that information. And it also is one of the reasons I think we can give you this much detail in the budget document that in years past we didn't have that opportunity before we transitioned with the Munis system. Not that everything's wonderful, but that at the same time we're finding that we can control things to a greater extent, and department heads have access to that information, and it's live information. So they know it's not a case where they wait till the end of the month to get a printout. Now it's a case where they know what every single account is, and if they don't have enough money in an account, they got to show where that money's coming from for a budget transfer. So the level of responsibilities also increased as far as finance is concerned. Information technology, this is a natural lead into, it works out of the finance department in terms of Trish's manages this program as well. What we're trying to do is to get this to be global. This is going to sit over all of the different funds that we operate with. It's also going to be where information technology, that division is also dealing with the police department at this point. And we're changing over the technology that's used there, so it's universal. Everything with the wired system that we went to with the fiber optics, we've got now those networks are in tandem. And it's all because we've got one IT division that's going to be able to deal with it. It's highly sophisticated and very technical, but I think we've got the proper personnel in place. But we're doing with 2 people what I think we probably could use 4 people to be doing at this point. But technology is the backbone for any of our municipal operations. For us to be able to control those operations, we need to be able to better manage data. And we also have to make sure that it's secure. And I think this division's doing that for us. As I said, we're going to move any of the expenses associated with what was public information that are still necessary into the IT. We're still only looking at about a 2.5% increase next year, or $331,000. It's up $8,000 over the current year. Both employees that are within this division are senior at this point, so we're not seeing much of a change in terms of salary requirements. Moving on, the next is the tax assessment, and Gene has done an excellent job in identifying all of the different functional areas that he's responsible for. We've also got the department functions broken out and the Assessment Board of Review. As you can see from his priorities on 6-12, There's a number of different things that we need to do as far as the addendum bills, being able to close out this revaluation. I think so far, after the over 13,000 tax bills went out, I think we're looking so far at about 60 hearings that have been scheduled. So I think that so far, we're seeing, less traffic for the initial appeals than what we had anticipated. Those appeals will be handled by the reval company at this point. Once the reval company has completed its work, people will then have the right of appeal to the assessor's office itself, and if they're not satisfied with the assessor, the Assessment Board of Review. That means, that's one of the reasons that we've increased the, by a couple of dollars, the amount of money that's necessary for stipends, because we pay them, $25 for the meetings. There'll be multiple meetings that should be necessary for the Assessment Board of Review, and that's shown on 6-14. But overall, we're looking at the overall department at $401,000 or 3.5% for the 16-17 year. The planning department, this is the organizational chart, is on 6-15. The initial chart could have been put on an 18-column piece of paper for all of the different functions that the planning department didn't include here, but that they are responsible for. I think we've got a very active department. That certainly, the chart illustrates some of the more important responsibilities that they handle on a day-to-day basis. The department includes both the Planning Board's budget and the Conservation Commission's budget. I think Vin's done a proper review as far as what each of the department functions are, as well as what he sees the priorities in the current year and next year being. He's also listed the number of meetings and technical review committee meetings and the different boards. The Planning Department is responsible for providing liaison staff services for Historic District, Affordable Housing, Conservation Commission, and Economic Development. So we're attending a number of those meetings on a month-to-month basis, and all of that's going through Vin's desk based on the three planners that work out of that office. We're continuing to work with the state's transportation improvement plan as well as statewide planning, dealing with the zoning considerations. I think some of the major things that we're going to be looking at in the next year is some of the village planning issues that are still yet to be addressed. I think some things are going to come up as far as solar siting on private properties that needs to be addressed. We're also looking at some of the leased land, beachfront properties, on what type of changes are going to be necessary there. So there's an active agenda out there for both the Planning Department and the Planning Board. Vin also serves as the principal liaison with the university. I asked him to sit on the university's planning committee. I'm on the, and he attends those meetings on a monthly basis. So a number of things that are there. And also the sustainability work that's done so far is done through the Planning Department and will continue to be vested in that office. Overall, we're looking at about a 2.17% increase for the funding, about $396,000 for planning functions for next year. That includes $4,200 for the Planning Board and $850 for the Conservation Commission. The Geographic Information Systems is also a subset of planning, and Carol Baker has certainly provided top shelf services for us in terms of map production analysis and database management, and has got more and more involved as far as the training responsibilities, so that the department directors can use the information that's there and not have to have somebody else do the work for them. Everybody now is in a position where they can make their own maps and can identify different things without having to go to the GIS office. Certainly, it's a lot easier sometimes, particularly for the manager's office, to get GIS to do the mapping for me, but the training is available there. Plus, we've got that available globally on the internet for the public's use as well. It's a service that is well used, and I think it also saves people a lot of responsibility of having to come into the town hall. Same thing with Dale's office with what she has on file for land evidence records. It saves an awful lot of trips into the town hall. Now that we've got the view permit and view licensing in place, we think that'll also provide better opportunity to start having 24-hour operations available for people that are not available during the normal workday. That budget is up $9,888. The major change that's here is in the services. We were using a capital budget line item, and it's not proper to have it budgeted, which was the cost for having the hosting done for the GIS mapping that's out for the general public use. It should be an operational expense, so that's been brought in to the 16-17 year for the first time. We were taking that out of an annual appropriation for GIS improvements. It shouldn't be capital-wise because it's really an operational expense. So you can see there's a $6,400 increase in the services line item for GIS. Moving on to building and zoning inspection, Jeff's office is responsible for also for the town hall operation. So from building and zoning, obviously the plan reviews, field inspections, and dealing with the zoning appeals is the principal responsibilities. We're not looking for any changes in the personnel listings that are there. We are seeing that with the new view permit system, it's giving us an opportunity to use iPads in the field to be able to take pictures of violations and to be able to have them as part of the permanent record for that for those type of things. So I think we're becoming more efficient, and we're certainly being able to keep a better record set on things that may come back as a public safety issue at a later time. The goals are listed there that we want to scan some of the older permits into view permit, index the zoning, and be able to make better use of those systems. Now, the thing is, going forward, everything's great, but there's an awful lot of records in the past that we need to be able to go back on. I remember when Dale started doing backup of records, we were talking about land evidence records going back, 2 years, 3 years. Now her records are back to what, 76? All the way back to 76. So if we can get 1 or 2 years done a year, then it makes us more efficient in terms of the look back, as well as what people are willing to pay to be able to use those services. Zoning overall costs are looking at about $541,000, which is actually a decrease. Some of that's because when you look at the town hall account principally, we're seeing a decrease in expenditures of about 5.3%. The reason for that reduction is one is in the medical insurance going down because we went from a family to an individual, both on health and dental. And also we looked at the finance and IT department, looked at changes in billing practice for copy machines, and we were able to negotiate lower contract costs for that. So that will save additional dollars there. And the cost of heating the facility, like most buildings, costs have gone down. So we're seeing where we can take decreases, we are taking the decreases. So here we're looking at about a $3,300 reduction. That completes tab 6. I'd ask you to go to tab 10. Tab 10 is the public libraries, and that's the last account that we're dealing with this evening. The organizational chart shows that we operate with 3 library systems. Our library director is here, as well as representatives of the trustees of the library are also here this evening. The mission statement and department functions was put together by the library director. I think one of the main things is that we have seen the development of a very active trustees for libraries, and I'm expecting great things from them. They're doing needs analysis at this point. I think their priorities in the future are going to be more directly involved in terms of customer services and what it is that will bring more people into the library and what it is that will provide services at the library that, that people need, that technology now allows to be at that. How do we deal with e-books? How do we deal with correspondence? How do we deal with people who want to be able to deal with electronic media? All of those things are, if you've reviewed the minutes of the board, they've been holding focus sessions to talk about those types of things. I think that until those that plan is in place, these are probably the target goals that we're looking at. The budget's up 3.5%, but this is another one of those that goes to Liz's question. You can see that with medical expenses and dental expenses, we had changeover with a couple personnel where we had individuals that left our organization and family requirements coming in. So we ended up with about an $18,462 increase on the medical and another $1,200 on dental. So of the overall $40,000 increase, $19,700 is made up of increases in benefit costs, which are just directly related to the roll of a dice in terms of who's employed in the various departments. So that's half of the $40,000 increase, or the 3.5. So their increase would still be down in the 2 to 2.5% range, which is what we wanted it at. What I didn't want to see is reductions in the purchase of books. Those have been kept at current year levels, which is one of the major expenditures that they have. We're still forecasting a $94,000 book budget. How they spend that money is still up to the trustees and the director to determine in terms of the mix on whether or not it's going to be electronic, whether it's going to be paper, whether it's going to be audio. All of those different things are based on how that's going to play out. And certainly the board and the library director will manage within the funds that are available there. But I think that these priorities were written in December, and I think that as the library board completes their review, we'll see some changes with that, so that when we put 17-18 year together, you'll see probably a different schedule of priorities. And hopefully some accomplishments there that will show changes in the amount of circulation, as well as the number of library people with library cards. Because we've seen some declines on some of those things where we'd like to see increases. There's questions that need to be asked as far as children's hours and whether or not we've got children's hours at all 3 libraries or just 2, or do we need to get them back in? Is the publications necessary to be able to deal with those things? But I think that you're fortunate to have a library board that understands what their responsibilities are and is looking to address them.
Steve, I have a question. I was reading through the goals and objectives. Does the library long-term strive to reopen on Sundays? I know that there's been some discussion in the community of that. At least the Peacedale Library used to be open on Sundays, correct, and it's not anymore. I didn't know if that was part of their long-term goals.
I think that's something that the trustees are looking at this point. It's not budgeted for that. If they wanted to reallocate or change something within the confines of it, I think that we could take a look at that. But at this point, no, it isn't a budgeted item. I think we'd all like to have the library open on a Sunday, but it also creates some serious personnel issues. Because unless you start hiring new people you're changing existing people's work schedules. And that adds to some of the difficulties. Shirley, you may want to comment as far as the Sunday hours?
Is this on? Okay. Sunday hours were very popular when we were open. We cut them back, and I think it was 2000. It's been several years now when the whole town cut back all the departments, and we had to make changes. It is a significant impact on personnel costs because you have to give librarians time and a half. You have to give your full timers time and a half, and you'll need a librarian or two. We usually hired 2, and then you need 2 people at the circulation desk. Now, our circulation desk people are generally part-timers, and so they get straight time. But it is the issue of, do you pay them, do you hire them for extra hours, or do you cut back during the week? And I've got to say, we're pretty bare bones during the week. I mean, you know, when we're lucky, we have 2 people on the circulation desk, and we need to do that to maintain service levels. And in order to pull someone out of there 5 or 6 hours during the week to put them on Sundays, it's quite a burden. Okay. So we're looking at a little extra cost. Now, it is a cost that's really worth considering, but it would be an extra cost.
I was just thinking about the declining numbers of people who've got the library cards, and I think about students who are in school during the week and you know, having somewhere to go on the weekends. When
Actually, on our weekends, we were getting a very mixed bag on a Sunday. We were getting some students coming in, and they would come to stay to do projects together. Right. And then we had individuals, older and younger, who's kind of just drop in. And then we were also planning programs, and so with the attraction of the program, we were getting some circulation from that.
And I'm certainly not suggesting you pull anybody off of your midweek schedule or anything. I was just curious if that was a long-term goal for you.
I think long-term, we'd like to get back to Sundays, absolutely. I mean, long-term, I'd like to be open 4 nights a week at Peacedale. You know, that's been my hope for some time, but it's just a little tricky to do.
Any other questions as far as any of the accounts that we've gone over tonight? Because that really concludes what we had. I did want to mention, we did give you this as a cheat sheet so that you'll know what tab to go to where. I guess if there's no other questions, I conclude my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions the council or public may have.
Thanks, Steve.
I have a question. The school department and the proportion of the budget that they're responsible for, have we seen that decline over the years with the declining enrollment, or has it stayed around that 76%?
It's stayed in that general area. What I've asked the school department to do is to post what they have given the school committee. But what they've given the school committee is a PowerPoint presentation, not a line item budget detail. I will, prior to the meeting that you have with the schools, give you that detail. That'll at least give you what the last several years have been. It'll give you both the revenue and the expense statement. I haven't had a chance to, I was hoping that they would have that developed. They had put a budget out, a line item detail, in advance of my review of the budget, where I made $344,000 in adjustments. They have not taken that back to the school committee yet. Once the school committee has reviewed that, whether they agree or disagree with it, hopefully they'll put a final budget out that will then have the line item detail for you.
And I had one other question. When we were talking about the equipment to live stream for the meetings, and you mentioned the $11,000, and hopefully, if we don't have a referendum, maybe that could go towards it. What about the $19,000 that we were going to send, or that we usually spend for the Phoenix House? Is that another appropriation we could make?
It's one with looking at the contingency contingency account. What we're going to do is we're going to put the equipment spec out, come up with what the cost is, and then we'll recommend to you where to take those funds from. But we'll find it within the the 15-16 year.
Okay. Great. Those are the only questions I had.
Any questions from council members? I'll I really enjoy this fancy booklet that you made for us. It's very nice. I like the color coding, cheat sheets. I noticed that we saved $100,000 in overtime fees, it looks like, this year. Is that all from snow last year, or?
Which account are you looking at, Abel?
It was early on. I'm sorry, I should have remarked it.
Yeah, the $100,000 that you saw this change on was the $100,000 for the crossing guards. So if you net that $100,000 out, you're going to have no appreciable change in what the part-time salaries would be.
I think it was listed under overtime hours, is what I saw. Listed under.
I'll take a look. I'm not aware that there's a $100,000 reduction that's there. If there is, it's a change between overtime and it's probably in the EMS department, and we're probably looking at the difference between overtime and per diems. That shifts based on the personnel that are available. Take a look.
Oh, excuse me, I wanted to follow up also on the live streaming on the camera. I know you had mentioned, and I had read in here, the initial cost was just roughly $10,000 some odd dollars, and that was for the startup. What additional costs would we have to incur, do you know, possibly, or estimated in the first year, and then on an ongoing basis?
There shouldn't be, the 10,002 isn't for personnel. The 10,002 is to compensate Cox Cable for us to be able to use their wire to get from here to Westerly. So the cost of labor is already built. Whether or not we stream or whether we have live, we've got Billy. And he's
As long as
incorporated.
Billy stays, I'm happy.
So, I mean, it's a case where we've already budgeted for the camera operator's time, so it's not going to be a change for personnel. The only thing that would make changes is if the council decided that it wanted to have live broadcasts on all meetings, whether they're work sessions or those types of things, where we don't have that televising going on now or streaming, because then we would have to overspend that budget and the personnel cost would go up. Yeah, I'm looking at it, it does look as if it's the crossing guards that's the only $100,000 change that we're seeing in the police account. If you see the account number that you want me to look at, I'd be glad to review it.
Well, it was only good news. So is there, at this time, are there any comments or concerns from the public? If so, just come up to the podium and state your name. Well then, I guess this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.